Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Search with Candour. I am one of your hosts, Jack Chambers-Ward, and we're back in the studio with Mark Williams-Cook.
Hello, it's me again.
Welcome back, Mark. We're not quite as long as last time. I think we went about 6 weeks last time. Now it's our usual monthly cadence. We're back together in the studio and talking all about the latest SEO news.
Oh, and some things happened.
Oh, some things have happened, that's for sure. But before we get to the news, here is a word from our sponsors. The first sponsor for this week's episode is AlsoAsked. You can go to AlsoAsked.com and check out this fantastic and unique intent research tool. As we probably already know, search intent is at the core of everything we do as SEOs. Even if you're not directly working in content, understanding what your users are trying to achieve through their searches is still pretty important. I think we can all agree. On top of this, Google has told us that it takes up to 9 searches for users to complete their goals. This can be a pretty hard picture to capture, to be honest, with traditional keyword research tools. So what if you could get hold of up-to-the-minute questions that users have asked that have been clustered by intent by Google themselves? Well, that's exactly what AlsoAsked actually does. AlsoAsked mines and organizes Google's People AlsoAsked data in real time, showing you the next most likely question your searchers are going to ask. Best of all, it's completely free. You don't even need to create an account to try out AlsoAsked. Of course, if you do find it useful, there are paid options as well. We have the free, we have the light, and we have the pro options in terms of accounts that you can subscribe to. At the touch of a button from these accounts, you can download not only the questions people are asking, but also the answers Google has selected, the website URLs, and the titles that are ranking for those answers as well. AlsoAsked has the world's only API for People AlsoAsked data, meaning you can combine this data you're pulling from whatever questions you're asking directly into tools. You can combine it with things like ChatGPT to really supercharge your content briefs and transform the way you write content at scale. Go to AlsoAsked.com and check out this fantastic intent research tool today. This episode is sponsored by HIVE MCR. HIVE MCR is a new kind of SEO conference bringing together the UK's brightest minds in PR, SEO, and UX. The first HIVE MCR debuts on the 29th of August 2024 and tickets are free. Hosted at the New Century Hall in Manchester, HIVE MCR speakers have been carefully curated and the schedule has actually been chosen by the attendees. The lineup is seriously impressive with many recognisable and respected names from across the digital marketing industry and a few former Search with Candour guests on there as well because, of course, we have the best guests and they have some fantastic speakers. The speaker list includes Billie Gina Hyde, Lou Ali and Sophie Gibson, Jono Alderson, Luke Carthy and Chris Green, Joe O'Reilly, Matthew Martin and Katie Powell, Hannah Montgomery, Eva Cheng and Steve Payne. All of these talks and panels are moderated by Stephen Kenwright, James Hayward-Brown, and the creator and organizer of HIVE MCR, Charlie Whitworth himself. And New Century Hall has hosted legends in the past, like local Manchester legends, the Stone Roses, Jimi Hendrix, The Who, and the Bee Gees. So you know there's going to be a very Mancunian summer party and DJ set to close out the night at the end of the evening. As I said, the first event is coming up on the 29th of August 2024, so you need to get your tickets now. Go to hive-mcr.co.uk or click the link below in the show notes or the video description and get your tickets now before they disappear. They are free and it's coming up very soon on the 29th of August. Get your tickets now. So if you've been living under a rock for the last week or so, it broke earlier. The time you're listening to this, it's last week, but the time of recording, earlier this week, Google have lost a very big decision in the antitrust case that we've been talking about for months now, it feels like. We've covered it a couple of times on the show before.
We've covered the documents that spilled out the side.
Very much
talking
so.
about how the search engine's working.
Yeah. So I'm going to kind of talk around the legality stuff. We are not lawyers, we hasten to add. We are but mere SEO people. We're going to kind of talk about some of the legalities and what that could mean for the future of Google and how that's going to change. And we've also got some really interesting data from the fantastic Marie Haynes, who has, of course, dived into the, I think, 267-page legal document that I skimmed through earlier, and I was like, I am not ready for this just unformatted wall of text. There are a couple of diagrams in there. I was like, oh, that's how a search engine works according to the law and stuff like that. But let's dive into, actually, an article from Search Engine Journal that kind of breaks everything down. And basically, they have decided that Google is a monopoly. That's kind of what it boils down to.
Shock face.
I know, right? A federal judge in the US has confirmed that Google is a monopoly and is in violation of antitrust laws. What that means is that Google and their business practices are essentially actively prohibiting other competitors for working in similar spaces. So the search side of things is what we're discussing here. There'll be a separate hearing and a separate legal side of things for the advertising side of things, I believe at the beginning of September. I think it starts like the day after my birthday or something like that. So happy birthday to me from Google. More stuff to talk about. But this is specifically focused on the organic side of things, on the search side of things. And essentially the main thing it boils down to, and they've kind of, Matt from SEJ has highlighted here, Google paid for default status, blocking rivals from half the market. And what that means is a lot of devices default to Google and Chrome as their search functions, essentially. Mostly Apple, which I believe was a $20 billion payment to Apple.
Nice.
To ensure that whenever you use Safari, the default search function is Google. There's a couple of quotes here going through from the judge, Amit Mehta, as well. I think this one is a very nice little kind of summary of the decision here. After having carefully considered and weighed the witness testimony and evidence, the court reaches the following conclusion. Google is a monopolist, and it has acted as one to maintain its monopoly. It has violated Section 2 of the Sherman Act, which is where the antitrust law, the most recent antitrust law updates come from. And specifically, they found that Google abused its dominant position in several ways, paying hefty sums to ensure default status on device and browsers, as we just said, leveraging user data to reinforce its search engine's documents, which we'll talk about in their dominance, we'll talk about that in a moment, and illegally protecting its monopoly over search-related advertising. So how are you feeling about this, Mark? I assume you're not surprised. None of us are really surprised, right?
Yeah, I think the writing was been on the wall for a while.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember working in PC world many years ago and having discussions about, it was when I learnt the OEM equipment manufacturers get paid to preload software onto machines. And, you know, I was only like 19 or something at the time and I hadn't thought too much about that. And I found it interesting actually to think about how you're creating that pattern of behavior, that recognition. And I think, you know, it's easy to underestimate how powerful that is by having Google as the default in everyone's pocket in their phone, that even when, apart from the fact that, yes, you're blocking obviously other people being there and, you know, they've been found to be abusing their monopoly position to do that, but it's a hard habit to break. Once people form habits, they become, you know, less, they cost like less energy to do because you have to think about them, you just do them. So even when you get new products that are maybe slightly better, they just don't take. You need to be, significantly better or different. Which hopefully maybe what we're seeing now with things like Search GBT, looming on the horizon.
I know a few SEOs have been using Perplexity recently. I was talking to Miriam Jessier about it the other day, and like you can share the SERPs and you can share essentially what is kind of like a Twitter thread of your SERPs. So as you're searching for stuff and then fine-tuning your search or whatever, you can share that with another person so they can understand your thought process. And we were kind of like searching for different things and sharing it back and forth, like, this is actually quite cool. In a, I don't know when I'd use this in real life kind of way. It was like, it's a cool idea. And I think, you're totally right. And I think we talked about this when we were discussing the Bing versus Google versus Brave search we did a few months ago, right? Where it's cool, that's great. Brave can do all this cool stuff with privacy, and that in theory a lot of people want more privacy, and you know, with the whole cookie thing happening and more people being aware of how much their data is being used online, especially by companies like Google, that people want that kind of stuff. But the effort of like finding Brave, downloading Brave, going out of your way, importing your bookmarks and all the extra stuff that comes with it, rather than just just click the default thing and just use it there because it's the easiest way of doing it. And
just adjusting to the results. Because I know through many years what I need to tweak to get the result I'm trying to coax from Google.
And
I'm not as good at that on Brave, on Bing. But, that said, they're currently giving me, in my opinion, more helpful results a lot of the time. But if I need something really specific, that's why I found it harder to do on Google. So you need those inflection points, which are hard to come by. So yeah, not particularly surprised.
No.
And I think, what do you think is going to change anything?
I think the big problem, and I know we talked about this before we started recording, there's a big freak out of oh my God, Google's lost this case. That's kind of not how legal stuff works for one of the biggest companies in the history of the world. They have all the possible legal defense. I think even the judge complimented their lawyers. The legal standards have been excellent throughout was included in the documentation and stuff. So they are unsurprisingly the tip top lawyers who know exactly what they're doing. And there is a whole I think 2 or 3 more stages of potential appeals and going past Supreme Court stuff.
Yeah, you can kind of go up the court system.
Very much so. Yeah. And Google have already said they're going to appeal. That is already confirmed. Surprise, surprise, because why wouldn't you, essentially, if you're one of the biggest companies in the world? You'd be mad not to, essentially.
I said it reminds me of when you see policemen try and take away drunken, disorderly people. And then they just go limp or make it as difficult as possible to be dragged. I feel like that's what Google's doing. And it's this 600-pound gorilla. And they're okay, well, you're guilty. And they're oh, and they've just kind of gone limp. And everyone's well, we're going to have to drag them through these other courts now. And they're just, it's going to, I think it's going to take a while to get through that process.
Very much so, yeah.
I think maybe the outcome, if it takes a few more years, might be less relevant to Google as well from a business perspective, because it gives them time as well to do mitigation work, knowing an outcome's likely, definitely, and move things away. So
I think that's a really, really salient point where this gives Google an opportunity to kind of, I don't know, dial back a little bit or enough to keep some people happy and a kind of see, we do care about our customers, we do care about our consumers, we're changing this thing not because we got caught out, don't worry about that, we're doing this thing because we believe we're the best search company and all this kind of stuff. And we'll get to the official statement from Google in a minute.
What do you think? We had all that news around TikTok being a search engine.
Oh God, yeah.
Do you think that was Google led around the time of this trial to take focus away from people just using Google?
Yeah, thinking about how many users use TikTok. See, we don't have a complete domination of the search industry. It's TikTok. Look, how many people are using TikTok to search stuff?
Let me let you get back on track. I keep derailing you.
Yes, so Google basically disputed that share of the search. It pretty much is, yeah. Google dispute the 90% share of search market, and basically, as you were saying here, argued a broader definition of that competitive landscape, that a lot of other sites have search functions and should be considered search engines. So companies like Amazon, like TikTok, really it was pretty much DuckDuckGo, Bing, and Mozilla, Firefox, that were witnesses and part of this trial and kind of being the main search competitors against them. And they're kind of been yeah, but we're not completely dominating. Look at all these other options you could be doing. People search on TikTok. People search on Amazon. That's not quite the same, though. Potential ramifications, I think, force changes and all that kind of stuff. I don't see much of this stuff actually happening anytime soon, but this trial's been going on since it's a 10-week trial, and the case began taking documents 4 years ago in 2020. So this stuff does not happen fast. Nothing with companies this big and ramifications this potentially large is going to happen anytime soon. So don't suddenly right, I need to pivot all my stuff into Bing and I will never check Google rankings ever again. I'll just check Bing rankings for my clients from now on, all that kind of stuff. A really nice little comparison that Matt does draw towards the Microsoft antitrust stuff in the 90s when they had their whole default machines and all the kind of stuff they had with their operating system stuff back in the day. Again, that took a very long time to go through and very, very long time to actually implement in any sort of scale. So don't hold your breath. Speaking of holding your breath, let's have a look at the official statement from Google.
I love this. I adore it.
This is classic Google from Kent Walker, who is the president of global affairs at Google. And yes, this is the official statement. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see I'm literally reading it from the official Google Communications Twitter. If you're listening, trust me, I will include links in the show notes if you want to prove it, because it sounds like it might not be real. This decision recognizes that Google offers the best search engine. Nailed it. Problem solved. But concludes we shouldn't be allowed to make it easily available. Woe is us. Oh, how hard Google have it. That was my little ad-lib there, by the way, listeners. We appreciate the court's finding that Google is the industry's highest quality search engine, which has earned Google the trust of hundreds of millions of daily users. They're really cherry-picking the sections of the legal document there. And that Google has long been the best search engine, particularly on mobile devices. And we have continued to innovate in search, and that Apple and Mozilla occasionally assess Google's search quality relative to its rivals and find Google's to be superior. Sorry, it's not our fault. We just happen to be the best. Given this, and that people are increasingly looking for information in more and more ways, we plan to appeal. Surprise, surprise. As this process continues, we will remain focused on making products that people find helpful and easy to use.
After I read this, I went and looked at Ken Walker's LinkedIn profile because I was like,
of course,
I have to see this man's face. And I just looked at him. I was like, you got a lot of stones, Ken. You got a lot of stones to make a statement like that.
I mean, yeah.
I was saying, comparing to you before, to me, this is like if you ran a running race and you took banned substances and you won, and then they stopped you and like, oh, I'm afraid we've found that you've won illegally because you've taken banned substances. And your first reaction to that was, I recognise that I'm the best runner here.
You did say I just won, so yeah, I agree.
Like,
did win.
Like, yeah, I've been running really fast all season. It's
mad.
Just, yeah, I just enjoyed it so greatly.
It's so perfectly like cherry picked. Just like, yeah, we really agree that the court thinks we're the best. We're the highest quality search engine that's earned the trust of hundreds of millions of daily users.
This is what you came away with from this trial.
Yeah.
Like, you're illegally abusing a dominant market position. We are awesome, and we are pleased that you see that.
We have so many people using our products. Aren't they just the best? Anyway, so yeah, like I said, there will probably not be any significant ramifications from this in the near future. Don't freak out, listeners and viewers. Not yet, at least. And I mentioned we've got a lovely dive into the data and information from the one and only Marie Haynes, who is one of the best at diving into nuanced data and pulling out really interesting insights and connecting dots and all that kind of stuff. So let's have a look at this lovely little Twitter thread from Marie here. Starts off with, as I said, the very dry PDF. Sorry, 286 pages confirmed there from Marie. Good Lord.
I think the trick was you didn't have wine when you did it. So
I don't really drink wine. So,
well, you've got to try, obviously, because this is what got Marie through it.
I got a strawberry Ribena. Does that count? If you leave it out in the sun for a couple of weeks, that'll go fizzy.
So I read this thread, and to be honest, like I skimmed through some of the like legal stuff because it interests me less, to put it lightly. But what I really liked about Marie's thread was, again, she picked up on some of the technical details, which interests me more, being a bit nerdy. That was in the documentation was released. So we had some stuff about search share there, but I think she had some really interesting bits on the different systems that Google have.
Going through some Bert and some mums in a second. People really like using Chrome, it seems, unsurprisingly.
So here we go. So I think the first, it's actually next bit here was that Google was using user data to decide how often to crawl websites and which websites to crawl. And I think so actually we just had Gary Eash recently say, if you're kind of keeping up, I think this was on their podcast, they were talking about the way crawling happens. It's not just like Googlebot bounces around the web crawling every single link and that's what Google crawls. Googlebot's basically going and fetching lists of URLs, and then there's a whole bunch of processes that happen back at Google to decide, if they should be crawled, when they should be crawled, what priority, how often. And I found it interesting there that she's picked up that user data again is one kind of dial there for that. She actually brought up as well in this around a system called Instant Glue, which I thought was fascinating, which was the system that was or is, I should say, handling. I don't know if it's it was a bit deeper in this thread. Yeah. But she brought up it was essentially how Google's changing search results based on click data. So when clicks intent changes really quickly, like there's something in the news, Google has a system to essentially adjust that.
Right. Yeah.
Super interesting as well. In here, I know I'm just I'm jumping around while you're desperately trying to scroll and find them. Was the list of systems that don't use machine learning or aren't as heavily on machine learning.
I saw that a second ago.
So again, I really liked having all of these systems kind of grouped together. So she's written here, let's talk about machine learning systems that don't rely heavily so much on user data, which was RankBrain, DeepRank, RankBert, Mum.
I'd never heard. Obviously, we've talked about BERT many times. Not heard RankBert as a combo.
There's been some interesting evolutions when you read the document about how they're naming some of these systems, and I really like the way that Marie Haynes describes this, which is she says, you know how LLMs predict the next word in a sentence? These systems are built to predict which content to show a searcher. So especially when RankBrain was released, Google was quite vocal in that it was a system that handled their 15% of queries they hadn't seen before.
Yeah.
And I found that interesting because I was like, okay, so if they haven't seen a query before, they presumably won't have user data on it. But with these machine learning models, as an LLM's trying to predict your next word, it's kind of predicting, okay, from this data, this is the kind of SERP we think, we should show. And what she's done there is it belies how smart I think Marie is in that I think the conceptual understanding of how some of these systems work can actively make you better at SEO, even if you don't understand the underlying maths. I think sometimes we get too wrapped up in trying to, okay, what's the formula or the mechanism behind that? It's like, if I held a tennis ball up for you and like was I'm going to drop this, you would know in your head, right, what's going to happen, and it's going to fall at this speed, and it's probably going to bounce about this high.
You don't need to do the calculations to.
But most people would struggle to. If I said to them, well, can you tell me the acceleration due to gravity? And I know you probably could because you're a degree. But my point is, you have like a model in your head about how it's going to work.
Yeah.
And I think that's what you develop in SEO in a way when you learn about these new systems, and when you have people that can pretty smartly encapsulate this is the type of work it's doing for this instance that affects these scenarios. You can more accurately predict what's going to happen when you do a thing, when you migrate a site, when you build links. So I'd really recommend going through this thread because it's got primary information on it, like horse's mouth type stuff from court documents.
If you're not watching this on YouTube or Spotify and you're just listening, everything we're talking about and everything Marie references is directly screenshotted from the legal documentation. She has gone all the way through all 286 pages, so it is all, like you said, straight from the horse's mouth kind of stuff, which is always very interesting when you're under oath and have to be incredibly specific and legal about all this kind of stuff. So there's no, sorry, we're the best search engine in the world. It's not our fault. This is actual, that you get rid of those layers and the extra kind of marketing-y spiel kind of stuff, and this is the kind of raw, about as raw as you get, I think, from these big companies when they have to be held accountable under oath, basically.
So I think with the Google Content API leak was like an example there of how that data was misinterpreted as sort of very good primary data, when actually, because it didn't have any context, it was essentially variable names with no weightings, no clue to how they're included. That was treated as, like fact, axiomatic fact. And then people were sort of building theories on top of what was very shaky ground. And that's where I think you get into trouble when you start building abstractions on abstractions, and then you just have a very wobbly Jenga tower of this is my idea of how this works. So, like you say, this is really good primary data. It's kind of correct as it possibly can be, I
Yeah.
think, unless you're working there. And I think Marie and other people have done a good job of encapsulating the meaning, because they can be pretty hard going, some of these documents,
definitely.
from a legal ready point of view and even from a technical
I have the
point of
PDF
view.
on my laptop in the other room. It is dry as hell. I got through the first sort of 10 pages and then just started scrolling, being like, anything interesting on this page? Scrolly. Anything on? No, fine. So yeah, I massively appreciate Marie going through and detailing all that stuff. Links for everything, of course, as always, in the show notes or video description down below. If you want to go and read this thread, read the actual documentation yourself for some reason, if you've got a spare 4 hours of reading this stuff, everything will be linked in the show notes as always. Next topic, we're going to talk about some Google Search Console. Talk about some recommendations that are coming to Google Search Console. And this is the official statement a week at time of release of this podcast, back in Monday, the 5th of August, 2024. Google are very excited to announce Google Search Console recommendations. This is different to insights. You might have seen little insights hovering around on your overview pages before. This is kind of the next step in that, I'd say. Something a little bit different, something a little bit more nuanced to you and your site specifically is what Google is kind of aiming at. It's going to be including things like crawling, indexing, even they mention things like trending queries and pages, whether your structured data is up to scratch, whether stuff is missing in your sitemap but has been crawled for whatever reason, all this kind of stuff. We're fairly top level, fairly vague on any of the specificities, but we do have this screenshot from Google that kind of highlights what it will look like in Search Console when you're in your overview page and the kind of topics that would be highlighted here. We've got events. 93% of your items aren't eligible for rich results. So talking about structured data and stuff there. Cool. 47 of your videos aren't indexed. No thumbnail URL provided. That's a shame. Swimming. Query recently got 42% less impressions than usual. I was like, okay, yeah, fair enough. Like trends in impressions and clicks and stuff. And Search Console only shows 35% of your performance data.
No, Google, you only show 35% of the performance data.
It's a weird third person, like, well, only Search Console does this. Like, who wrote this? It's Google Search Central. Like, you are Search Console. What are you talking about? Yeah. And the reason it does that is because you limited it to 1,000 lines that we can export from Search Console. Like, oh, you better connect it to BigQuery. I wonder who owns BigQuery. Who recently, integrated it into Google Cloud? Oh, Google did. Yeah, of course. Because I legit had a brief moment of like, why are they recommending BigQuery? Well, that's a weird there's so many other options.
Did you not know it was?
I'd completely forgotten. We did talk about it a while ago, and I completely forgot. And I was like, oh yeah, of course, it's part of Google Cloud now. So, go and use pay more money to us to do this thing that you can't do by yourself, and we'll recommend that you do that thing in the thing that you can't do it in to go and use another product that you can also pay for. Seems a bit dodgy to me. Some of it I think could be legit helpful, but
monopolistic, surely.
Yeah, exactly. Go and use our other products, genuinely. And something I was talking to a couple of the other SEO guys, I'm talking to you as well earlier, Mark, I'm kind of worried about how this might be conveyed to clients just logging in, or those less experienced people, the people who aren't working in professional SEO, and kind of just having a quick check on the Search Console. Like, I wonder how my site's doing.
Oh my God, we need to speak immediately. Swimming queries are down 42%. Yes, the Olympics is over. People have stopped swimming. Exactly. Swimming.
Exactly, yeah. It gives no context, and I assume some of these links will lead to you can learn more about events, learn more about video indexing and stuff like that. There are links in these little recommendations, but query performance is just going to be the standard, I assume, link you to the usual search results performance from Search Console, right? So it will not necessarily give the context there. And I would worry about this because I think a lot of people, again, take Google's word as kind of gospel of Search Console is often heralded, and I've said this on the podcast before, of that is the real raw data you're getting from the SERPs, right? That's not going through any of the filtering and the sanctioning and all that kind of stuff that a lot of the data goes through for GA4, for example. You're getting the literal clicks from the SERP to your site. So it's the best source of data. And then you click on this, and it's like, by the way, you're getting 42% less impressions for this particular query. And that must be correct because it's Google, because it's Google Search Console. That is the be-all and end-all of SEO data, right? It's like, well, no. And I feel like a lot of people might leap to conclusions. Again, this might just be a example of a couple of different options and stuff like that. They might look different once they're actually rolled out. And they very much clarified, like, even during complete rollout, they won't be fully available for all recommendations for all sites and all that kind of stuff. And they're going to roll it out very, very slowly, probably until the end of the year, I think is the impression, towards like early 2025. So you might not see this in your Search Console anytime soon. But I think it's an interesting thing that could cause a lot of confusion for people kind of taking it for it straight at its word, essentially. How are you feeling about it, Mark?
I just have PTSD from Google Ads recommendations, I think.
You haven't got 100% on your optimized score on Google Ads. So I think you should spend more money.
My default position is skeptical and suspicious of why they're doing it and how it makes them more money. Learning from my experience with Google Ads. But yeah, it's pretty much like you said, even with audit tools, that we use. Yeah. Context is always important. Yeah. With Google Ads, context was important. Spend more on these keywords. Well, they don't work in context to our business.
You'd get more leads if you spent more money. That's how money works.
You do a crawl with a crawl tool, and these pages are redirecting. They shouldn't be, and it's like, okay, well, these are this kind of link, and we want them to do that. Yeah. And I think you're just going to get the same with this. We've got to bear in mind, though, I imagine most people that are using Google Search Console are not SEOs.
Yes.
So will it be net helpful for them, for the web? Maybe. Therefore, is it a good thing to do? Yes, maybe. I wish we could turn it off because I know I'm going to get questions about it.
Yep.
Which is
look
fine.
forward to emails from our clients.
It's part of our job to handle that, and that's all cool. But it's potentially just more noise and distractions around things because that's one of the big challenges of SEO, right? Whether you're working in-house or whether you're an agency or freelancer working with a client, you have to pick your battles. You have to pick what you want to try and achieve.
Yeah, definitely.
And all clients, all managers, bosses, stakeholders always want everything, want to do everything, rank for everything. But the reality is normally you have to choose, okay, we're going after this and this is the strategy. And it's counterproductive when people see shiny things or get worried about, you just had all this growth, but then, Todd comes to you because 20% of your items aren't eligible for rich results.
It's always Todd.
Yeah, and I'm like, just leave us alone,
Todd and his rich results.
Get back to making your game.
Let's wrap things up with a potential of an upcoming Google update.
A core update.
Potentially, yeah. Of course, Barry Schwartz is hot on it. I know Glenn Gaben and Lily Ray have both covered this as well, so shout-outs to those guys for always being on point and on topic and up to date with this kind of stuff. There has been a lot of SERP volatility, to say the least. So let's scroll through some tools. I know Barry has checked SEMrush, SimilarWeb, Advanced Web Rankings, Cognitive SEO, all kinds of things.
Algoroo.
So, yeah. Algoroo. Is that the Australian?
You did that better than me. Nice. Yeah, I mean, I
it's
overheard
literally
them.
Got a kangaroo on it.
Overheard them talking about it in the office today.
Yeah, exactly.
So Brendan saying, wow, there's a lot of volatility at the moment.
I think, Brendan noticed it on SEMrush when he was checking earlier. And there was a quote from Danny Sullivan from a couple of weeks ago that was just like, it's probably coming soon. We're kind of due one, but we don't have a set date. We don't have a specific, yes, it's definitely coming.
Do you think they're just going to tell us after the fact again? That felt really dirty. I don't know why. It felt dirty because, we can see this going on, right? But we're not telling anyone there's a Google update, right? We're just saying it's volatility.
Yeah.
But then if they were 2 weeks later, we've done it, you feel like a bit of an idiot.
Yeah.
Because you're like, well, we kind of saw it, but you don't want to label it, do you? And then Google will be like, well, no, nothing's happening.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing because I know Glenn talked recently about the Bing update that happened not too long ago and how nobody really kind of talked about it partly because it's Bing and because when they do announce an update or in some cases don't, people don't particularly care. It's not headline news like
Yeah.
helpful content update integrated into all this kind of stuff. And obviously Barry highlights the now infamous September 2023 helpful content update that
Hated it.
killed
Not
all the
like
little
it.
publishers and all
Did
that
not
kind
like
of stuff.
it. Not a fan.
Yeah. So yeah, lots of volatility going on here. Lots of chat on Webmaster World.
It's been such a stalwart for years.
I know,
Like,
right?
Let's
I
go see
know.
what they're saying.
Yeah. So there's a lot of volatility happening that doesn't always, but does sometimes indicate something's going on. And I think it's something we always kind of have to take with a pinch of salt, right? There's always this case of stuff's changing, whether it's AI overview stuff or whether it's just adjusting of SERPs and things like that. But there has been a lot going on. I think Barry highlights last week's and the week before and the week before that. And it's kind of like 3 or 4 weeks in a row is kind of a big sign there.
Well, we're still getting, like again, we were talking about this earlier, that I haven't seen many people talk about. We are getting the rollout of AI overviews in the UK now. I know you're not getting
I've still
them,
not seen a
but
single one.
I consistently get them now on my phone, like, not every search, but very regularly with informational searches. So yeah, something is cooking. Interestingly, it was noted that Glenn said he hadn't seen any recovery of sites hit by the HCU in September, which I think is very interesting because both John Mueller and Danny Sullivan did. I think John said it directly, that you'd have to wait probably until the next update to see a recovery. And I think Danny, forgive me if I'm wrong, Danny, but effectively said words to those effect.
I don't know, like Brandon from Retro Dodo, who was one of the big smaller sites.
He got the tour, didn't he?
He literally got the tour of Google and all that kind of stuff. Like, okay.
Sorry for destroring your website.
Sorry for literally putting you out of business.
Do you want some candy?
Here's a lanyard.
Look how big our office is. You're getting the bus home, yeah?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. So I guess that I would expect to see some movement with HCU impacted sites if we were at core update stage. Might just be they're doing some work to other systems, whatever that needs to happen first. No idea.
Yeah,
but something's bubbling.
Something's bubbling.
It's good being a professional, knowing what's going on. Something's bubbling. Things are going up. Things are going down. Strange world. A lot of movements.
And that's why we don't have you on the client reporting call.
Look, got to be honest.
Stuff's happening. Maybe not. Who knows?
Yeah.
See you next month.
I'll tell you when we're told.
I mean, that's kind of how a lot of it works at the end of the day with the, and sometimes we don't get told, like you said.
No, yeah.
Sometimes it's like,
oh,
by the way, that happened 3 weeks ago. And that's why this thing has completely crashed into the ground.
That said, with actual businesses, actual clients, touch wood, everything's been pretty steady sailing.
Yeah, we
it's
do keep
only
an eye on
been
that stuff.
our like little experimental small publisher sites that have been squished. So
I know you shared a screenshot not too long ago, right? And everyone was like, oh, "Mark, you've shared a screenshot of one of your like clients' websites." I was like, "No, that's our website." Like,
it's
fine. Don't worry.
And that one's doing pretty well as well.
Yeah,
so it's actually only one we've had that got smacked by the HCU. So yeah, we don't have to have those conversations very much. It's stuff around you is going up and down.
Yeah.
But
I've seen a couple of client competitors affected by it, which has been interesting in a couple of cases, but not anything like straight off a cliff kind of affected, but noticeable little dips that seem to be kind of corresponding and stuff.
Probably Reddit ranking now.
Maybe. Genuinely, yeah. There's a lot of like, it's in the kind of like medical kind of space.
Oh, okay.
So there's a lot of informational kind of stuff going on there. So
Reddit's the best source for medical information.
As we learned from putting glue on your pizza and all the other stuff. What, drinking your pee to cure kidney stones? And
that's still not working.
That would explain a lot. Well, folks, that has been another monthly recap news edition running through everything that's happening with Google, pretty much all the legalities, all the volatilities, and everything in between. Thank you for joining me again, Mark. It's always fun to pick your brains, get your hot takes, and
railroad your carefully scripted podcast.
Not carefully scripted.
Your carefully scripted subjects.
Yeah, sure, yeah. You come in and like, let's just freeform it. I'm like, okay, next week, but let's just do it as a live stream. Okay.
Yeah, we should do the next one as a live stream.
We should do. Yeah. Hold us accountable, listeners and viewers. We always say this. We're like, we'll do it next time. And
I normally say it to you half an hour before we go.
Yes, so you do.
Next one.
Like, I literally can't set it up. And
let's do it. Next one.
Next one will be live on LinkedIn. Let's say LinkedIn.
Let's do a LinkedIn one.
We'll do that. We'll be probably mid-September-ish, something like that. Yep. So stay tuned for that, folks. In the meantime, I'm, of course, back every single week with new guests, new topics, new interviews, all that kind of stuff. Mark, you'll be back in a few weeks. So
I will.
We'll have, I'm sure, lots of other interesting stuff, maybe less legal stuff to talk about next time, hopefully.
Nice.
In the meantime, thank you so much for watching or listening. Wherever you are watching or listening, please like, subscribe, all the usual stuff. Share the good word of Search with Candour around the internet, as you can give us all the positive reviews and all that kind of stuff. We'd hugely appreciate that. And until next week, have a lovely week.